So one of the great things about RuneScape is there's so much different stuff you can do, like entire skills you could just miss out on for a long time because of the sheer size of content in this game. Which is my excuse for, after playing off and on for like 15 years, that I just got my first fire cape. Now I've fairly decent stats and a fair chunk of time in old school, but I'd still say I'm fairly newbie, which is fine. Actually, I think it's a good thing. Before my big bout with Jad, I decided to watch some tutorials on the caves, and while they helped a lot, they were from the point of view of people that had pretty good high kill counts, people who knew really what they were doing, and there's a lot of little stuff you kind of miss out on because you forget what it's like to not know how to run through it. So I'm going to use my newbie point of view to try and explain the fight for my fellow noobs out there. Now, before we jump into the actual fight caves themselves, I want to go over some different gear setups, and I want to go over my inventory. Now, this inventory setup I have is fairly different than what I've seen others do. There's a few reasons for that. Now, I decided to go ahead and bring some actual food along with some brews. This is so I can get out more health and get it out faster. Depending on your stats, you may want to change this up a little bit, but for me, Angular Fish works really well. It heals and overheals more than my brews. And whenever you take a brew, you kind of want to use a restore, so that makes this take even longer to get your health up. These are my special Jad food. I take one before he spawns, and I eat any while I fight him if I need to. Other than that, it's fairly standard from what I've seen from some other people. I like a stamina potion because being caught without sprint in a fight could dramatically change the fight. Some brews and restores. The amount is really gonna change around depending on how you play the fight. For me, I actually don't really take much damage. Even on my first attempt, I hardly took any damage until Jad. So it's something you kind of need to feel out. I would probably be safe and give yourself maybe 8 brews. Now, the first time I fought Jad, I choked and I died. My second time, I brought dragon darts to swap to use those so I could kill him faster, and I ended up getting the cape off that one. Doing that is absolutely not necessary, but it'll speed it up a little bit. It's still pretty fast to use addy darts, which I brought them, but I actually decided just to use the addy darts so I could show it on video how it is. And some range potions are what you're going to want to bring for obvious reasons, get some more damage out. And now onto the gear. For me, my setup I had been using is I'm wearing full blessed d'hide and Ava's, Barrow's gloves, archer ring, imbued, a fury, a blessing, and a blowpipe. The blowpipe has addy darts in it, like I said earlier. For this video, I'm on task, so I'm going to be using a Slayer helm, imbued. A cheaper version of the setup I would recommend would be something like Blessed Coif. You could kind of do a Nezi helm if you wanted, if you had some sort of restrictions, but you'll lose out on some damage. It's slightly better defensively, but you should kind of be blocking stuff with prayer anyway. Amulet of Glory, pretty great for the money, very cheap, especially compared to a Fury. Just go with that. Still gonna want Navas. Black d'hide body and chaps are pretty great and very cheap. A rune crossbow with broad bolts, assuming you have the Slayer level, otherwise go with some addy bolts. And then diamond bolts E for Jad. If you can afford it, get a blessed spirit shield. If not, a normal spirit shield is fairly close in stats. For doing this against Jad, blessed bracers are actually relatively similar in stats to Barrow's gloves, so you can get those and it's only 5k. And then snakeskin boots are really the only thing you're gonna get for fairly cheap, so go with those. And then honestly, just pick your favorite ring. There really aren't a lot of good rings that I could see anyway. If you have any recommendations, I saw something that I think is like from a quest or something. I don't know. I'm not even going to mention it. Literally just pick something that looks pretty, like, or get, an archer's ring. That works too, but that's really expensive. So, and for the baller version, I'll be quick, because if you're balling, you probably don't need this video. But, maybe you're a noob with some money. I don't know. So if you guys have the extra cash and want some upgrades, grab it from here, okay? This also is going to help if you want to upgrade some pieces. You have a little extra money, but not necessarily like full ball in. You can pick some of these, mix and match. So Armadillo Helm, Necklace of Anguish, Ava's, the best one you can get, armadillo chest plate, and chain skirt. Dude, if you can get a T-bow, go for it. I just stick with the blowpipe, Barrow's gloves, Pegasian boots, and an archer's ring. All right, now that we got all that out of the way, let's go into the actual cave. Now, my kills normally take a little less than an hour. I think in this video I get it at like 53, 54 minutes, something like that. So if you have lesser gear than mine, expect to commit a fair bit of time here. Now, the enemies that spawn per wave are set, but the positions are not. If you want to try to figure it out, I'm going to have a website in the description that can help. It takes like the first like 2 or 3 waves, the position of them, and it kind of predicts where they're going to be spawning. This is kind of advanced stuff, so I'm not really going to go over it in this video. Okay, now if you've ever watched any videos of anyone talking about the whole fight, people commonly refer to the different enemies by their level, which for me was kind of confusing at first, but once you get into the groove of this a little bit, you kind of learn how you're prioritizing your fights and the strength of the enemies, and it kind of makes sense. For example, the first enemy we'll see is a bat. It is level 22. It's pretty weak. The last enemy that we'll see, other than Jad, is level 360, and it's very strong. Now, I'm going to give you a short rundown of all that goes on in the caves. I'll have a guide linked that you could follow, which goes over all the spawns and when they happen, which can be pretty helpful. Wave 1 has an enemy that is level 22. They only have 10 hit points and their max hit is like 4. These are pretty easy to manage, but you actually normally want to prioritize killing these over pretty much everything later, as these drain prayer when they hit you. Their prayer drain is based off of their damage plus 1, so even if they hit a 0 on you, you're still going to lose an extra prayer point. These have 20 hit points and don't do much damage. These are probably the least important to kill, other than there's actually another level 22, which comes from the 45. Whenever you kill the 45, it splits off into 2 little 22s. I'm probably just going to refrain from referring to those at all by name. Just if I'm talking about those, just consider it the 45 and consider 22 to be the bat. Now, everything involved with the 45 don't hit much, and the biggest thing is you can actually use them for utility. You can actually use them to body block other enemies fairly easily. Wave 7 is when you need to start thinking about using your prayer. A level 90 will spawn, and he is ranged. You need to start praying range on these. They can hit fairly accurately, and all the enemies after them actually can too, so this is kind of where the game really starts. You're going to keep seeing the level 90s until around wave 15. So up until that point, you're pretty much going to need to keep praying on and off with the protect from missiles. Or you could just keep it on the whole time if you'd rather. On wave 15, we get our first meleeer, level 180. It's fairly slow, and you could safe spot it or body block it without too much trouble. I'm not really going to go super in depth on safe spotting. That's like a more, I don't know if I'd call it advanced or more basic. To me, it's more basic. To some of you, it might be more advanced. Safe spotting, you pretty much just, this character is so big that he kind of collides with other stuff, and you can block his path. There's a really popular spot in the cave called Italy Rock, which you can body block at. There's also other spots that you can do, or you could just body block it with a 45 or something like that. Now, this creature can heal itself and others around it, but I probably wouldn't bump up its priority too much because of that. It normally isn't too big of an issue if it can get that off anyway. Now, as long as the level 180 can't hit you, then you're pretty much in good shape. You don't really need to rush to kill these just because they can heal. On wave 22, you're going to get the level 90s popping up again. You're going to need to protect from missiles until wave 31. You could try to kill the ranger or meleeer first, depending on your positioning. Just do whatever makes you take the least amount of damage or what makes you most comfortable. Wave 30, the 90s disappear and 2 180s will be there. It's pretty standard stuff, just safe spot them, but the real change comes on the next wave. On wave 31, you pretty much are going to need to keep a protect from magic on for the entire rest of the caves. This is the first time we're going to see our new enemy, the level 360, which uses magic. These can kill you pretty quick, but because we're pretty much always going to be praying protect from magic, you don't necessarily need to kill them first. Now that you've seen all the mobs for the caves, we can talk about priority. Whenever you're moving around, you almost always want to do what will make you take the least amount of damage. So you may need to change up what you attack at any given moment. With this in mind, I would prioritize the level 22 bats first. You really want to keep your prayer, and they die pretty quick. If you get the opportunity to sneak in some kills in the level 45s because they're so quick to kill, you can go ahead and try to do that. I do that sometimes, but you may want to keep them around to body block. Otherwise, they're probably the least important to kill. Second priority is the level 90 rangers. The quicker they go down, the less prayer you're going to have to use. If you're praying magic, you especially want to kill these fast so you aren't taking a bunch of free projectile damage. If you want to save some prayer, you can go for the level 360 mage next. If he dies, then you can turn off that prayer for a little bit, which will help you finish the wave. But I actually find that it's easier for me to focus on not getting hit by the meleeers, the level 180s. So I normally go for those first. And that's the general priority list for me. And that pretty much covers up everything to wave 61. For wave 61, you'll have 2 level 360s. As soon as the wave starts, you'll want to run around and look for the orange 360. Make a note of where he was and go finish the other 360. Once you do that, we're going to go ahead and prep for Jad. The orange 360 is actually about where Jad is going to spawn. That's why we wanted to hunt him down real quick. Then, before you kill the 360, go ahead, take all your potions, eat your food, swap your darts, whatever you need to do, and finish him up, and we're going to jump into the Jad part. Now, there is actually a website that you can use to practice your prayer flicks on Jad. If you are interested in that, it'll be in the description. Jad is absolutely the toughest part of this. A max hit with his magic or range attack is 97. Whenever Jad spawns, I always start with protect from range on and hover over my protect from magic prayer so I can change it quickly. I absolutely recommend having hotkeys set up for swapping around at least your inventory and prayer. This will help make sure that you use one hand to swap between the two and the other hand for clicking so you don't have to keep moving your mouse all the way up and then down. You can get by without doing this, but I really recommend it. For Jad's magic attack, he starts to stand up a little bit and he kind of dangles his arms out. He then opens his mouth and shoots out the magic. For his ranged attack, he raises his arms up really high and slams on the ground. Then a projectile comes from off screen and hits you. This is kind of part of the reason why I like to start protect from range. Because if you're ever not sure if something's happening and for some reason you don't see anything, the projectile comes from off screen and hits you. You're going to see him open his mouth and shoot the magic, but if you miss something, there's still time for you to go ahead and pray range because you don't see the projectile. Obviously, getting your prayer changes down is going to be life or death here. You're going to have to figure that out, but something that I think is maybe a little less obvious, but just as important, is learning how not to choke. And in my experience, you can only really get one action out in between Jad attacks. So for example, if I get hit and I have to heal, I can eat and then I have to swap prayer and wait for the next attack. I can't attack him, eat, and swap prayer. I can't drink a brew and restore and then swap prayer. I need to drink and then swap prayer and then restore and then swap prayer. Now once it gets to about half health, there are going to be healers that will spawn. This is going to get a little tricky. You're going to want to pull the healers off of Jad by attacking them. If there are any healers behind Jad, make sure to swap to long range so you don't run to the healer, move, and get meleeed by Jad. That would be really bad. As long as the healers don't get Jad to full health, you should be good, so you can kind of take your time. Pull them off in between checking on your prayer, and you can either tank them or kill them. I believe if they get Jad to full health, they are going to respawn once he gets to half again. So even if you kill them, they aren't going to stay dead. But if he doesn't get to full, then they should stay dead and you should be good. For this, I decided to go ahead and tank them because I have pretty decent stats. As long as they aren't on Jad and they're next to you, they shouldn't be healing him, at least not very much. These are melee, so you can actually line them up and get them to body block the other ones and not take damage from all of them if you want, and then you're pretty good. Now, having Jad as a Slayer task actually doubles the chance of getting a pet, which unfortunately I didn't get, but if you already had a fire cape like I do, then you can go ahead and trade that in for another chance of the pet, which obviously I got to do. And unfortunately, I didn't get it. Oh well, I had to go for it. I've been getting more into bosses recently, so I'll probably try to make some more guides in the future, so look out for that. If you guys have any suggestions or questions, feel free to let me know in the comments below. And I think that's about it.